firstly, a very warm welcome to everyone for our Preparing for Brexit event. So it's our deal or no deal, what companies need to know when preparing for Brexit. So this morning we're going to be receiving expert advice from two local companies. We've got the lovely Kevin Walsh from LV Shipping. LV Shipping are one of the Norfolk Chamber's strategic partners. And then we also have Tracy Renshaw from Import Export Support. Just a quick format of how today is going to run. We're going to have a presentation from Kevin from LV Shipping. We're then going to move over to Tracy, and then we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, hosted by Nova from the Norfolk Chambers. Nova's our head of policy. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to ask questions at the end of today's event. We've got a Q&A function at the bottom of our Zoom pages. If people could be putting questions in there throughout the event, that would be absolutely fantastic. There is also the chat function. So if people wanted to introduce themselves or have a chat whilst the presentations are going on, that would also be great. I'm sure lots of you know how Zoom works by now. It's great to see so many familiar companies and members and people who are already working with import, export support and LV shipping. So we thought it might be interesting this morning if we started with a little poll, just to get a bit more of an idea of who's attending. So we're going to start with one poll question. Also, just to note that we are going to be sharing the slides after this event, so you don't need to make millions of notes. We will be sharing those afterwards. So the first poll question, just to kind of get an idea of who's here and what's happening today, is what type of business are you? We launched the first poll. What type of business are you? We've got manufacturer, service business, a freight company, or other. So I'll just give it a couple of seconds just so people have an opportunity to vote. Looks like there's a mix of people here today, which is fantastic. A few more seconds. Perfect. So thank you everyone for filling that in. It's great to see we've got lots of manufacturers, service businesses, but also other organisations with us today. So the next question we were going to ask is, at this stage, how prepared for Brexit do you feel? I know that's a tricky question with everything going on at the moment. So our next poll question, how prepared for Brexit do you feel? This is quite an interesting question. Again, we'll give it a couple of seconds just so people have the opportunity to answer. That is great. Thank you so much, everyone, for answering those questions. We'll share the results of how prepared did you feel for Brexit. So you can see some people feel very prepared, many people are in the middle, and a couple who don't feel prepared at all. So I now want to introduce you guys to Kevin Walsh from LV Shipping. As I mentioned before, LV Shipping are a strategic partner with the Norfolk Chambers. Kevin is the UK Sales Director and has been with LV Shipping for over 16 years. LV Shipping are a UK freight forwarding company. They're a Dutch-owned company. They've been in the UK since 1986 with offices across the globe, including Great Yarmouth, which is why the lovely Kevin is going to be presenting today. So we're really looking forward to hearing from Kevin on what companies need to know. So I'll hand over to you, Kevin.
Okay, thank you very much, Lizzie. Hope everybody can hear me okay. Welcome everybody. Hope you're all safe and well. And obviously, straight away you'll tell it's not a Norfolk accent as Lizzie says. It's I'm speaking to you from the banks of the Mersey this morning, but bear with me. I'll give my local credentials a bit later. I remember when myself and Lizzie and Tracy were first talking about organising this event, and it was a few months ago when we thought, well, the latest we do it in November, the more time we've got for everything to be sorted, we'll know where we are, whether it's a deal or no deal situation. So, of course, here we are on the 15th and we're none the wiser. So that shows you how much we know, but it's not for the want of trying to plan, I promise you. But the crucial thing is, I think companies have gotten sort of a bit wrapped up in whether there's going to be a deal or a no deal. And the one thing that companies of UK companies, exporters and importers have not really, I think, has gone under a little bit of the radar is the fact that regardless of whether there's a deal or no deal, our trading patterns with the EU will change. We will have to do and process customs clearances as of the 1st of January, and that's one of the main things I want to discuss this morning. One of the things we did, we're an Anglo-Dutch company, so we were founded in Holland in 1921 actually, but we've been in the UK since '86. So ever since we knew that we were coming out of the EU, our company, in conjunction with our colleagues in Holland, we've come up with what we call 10 sort of pinch points, if you like, or 10 areas, 10 questions in conjunction with our clients, where we feel people really need to have a handle and be right across these issues to know how best to make their own transition for Brexit go as smoothly as possible. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these because Tracy, after myself, will speak, and she'll go into a bit more detail as regards things like EORI numbers and data and classification codes. But there's a couple of things 2 points particularly I want to touch on, which is the elements of using either a freight forwarder or a customs intermediary, as the governments are calling them, which can include obviously the local chambers of commerce. And I know that Norfolk Chamber has been active in training staff and recruiting people to handle customs entries. But it's really important now, where we are on the 15th of December, unless of course you're planning on doing your own, and I don't know many companies, to be fair, that are, that you really have a discussion with a freight company or a customs broker, so that you know that from the 1st of January you'll have somebody who's acting on your behalf. And what we're doing, as long as a lot of other freight forwarding companies, we're sending out direct representation forms that we need you to sign in order that HMRC know that we've got authority from yourselves to act on your behalf, because the figures are actually quite frightening. I think from government estimates, the figure of the amount of customs entries that are going to be processed in the UK is going from 55 million this year, for example, to up to 270 million customs declarations in and out as a result of us exiting the European Union. Now that takes some doing. The government themselves have talked about the need for they're taking up the slack of 50,000 extra customs clearance clerks, and I know from speaking within the industry that that's nowhere near being currently fulfilled. But despite best efforts of chambers and governments and freight forwarding, we've been on a recruitment drive as a freight forwarding company. We've also retrained and trained existing members of staff into customs procedures. But it really is crucial that you people who are involved in importing and exporting to and from the EU have that conversation with a freight forwarding company now. When you do that, I would just ask you to try and ensure that those two accreditation that I've circled there, BIFA and AEO, that you're talking to companies that have both of those letters after the name. BIFA being the British International Freight Association, which is our trade association. It comes with a whole host of terms and conditions which protect yourselves and protect us on our side of the fence. It's international trade. At the end of the day, things can go wrong, cargo can go missing, damages can occur, ports can close. So they're there to protect yourselves and ourselves. BIFA also run a whole host of training courses. With just last week we had some colleagues on training courses very specific to Northern Ireland, for example, and how that will work post-January. So it's a very active trade association. There's about 2,000 companies in the UK trading as freight forwarding companies at the moment. About 3/4 of those are BIFA. So you do have plenty of choice out there. The second accreditation I would hope that you would look to ensure you're talking to is somebody who's AEO accredited, authorised economic operator. That means that, for example, in our case and in the case of everybody who's AEO, HMRC have actually visited, they've audited our systems in terms of customs clearance, and they've satisfied themselves that LV Shipping and other companies who are AEO accredited have the systems in place that are fully compliant and offer safe, secure systems. In theory, it doesn't always work in practice, but in theory, companies that are AEO accredited, their entries tend to go through quicker and the cargo tends to move smoother. Let's see what happens on the 1st of January. Just going back to point 7, which is the second point I'll dwell on out of our 10 pinch points that we came up with, is Incoterms. Now, doubtless, you will already be familiar with Incoterms, or even if you're not, you will have been working within an Incoterm, perhaps not even knowing it. The crucial thing is, as of the 1st of January, you really do need to know which Incoterm you're working. Incoterms, international commerce terms, I think they were set up in mid-1930s, 1936, and they define the relationship between the buyer and the seller, where your responsibility begins and ends in terms of the freight delivery, in terms of cargo delivery. And it also touches on such areas as insurance. It's absolutely crucial because, let's face it, up to this point, you've been moving cargo in from the likes of Nuremberg into Norwich, Duisburg into Durham, without the slightest, in the same way and with as much ease as you'd be moving cargo from Northampton to Norwich, and I'm trying to think of Dursley to Durham, without this limited minimum amount of paperwork. Certainly no customs clearance and no fiscal repercussions. That's all going to change as of the 1st of January. And what we're finding, there's actually 11 Incoterms in total, but what I'm just going to zoom in on 5 here, because it's really interesting. We're being inundated almost on a daily basis now by clients of ours who are coming on to us and saying, listen, our supplier in Europe is telling us that the way he wants to trade with us, or she wants to trade with us come the new year, is going to be different. And whereas they've organised the freight in the past, and they've told us that we're going to load the cargo Tuesday over here, it will be with you the following Thursday, that's changing. Companies in Europe now are becoming reticent and very loath to become involved in DDP terms, in delivered duty paid. They do not want to become involved in arranging customs clearance into the UK. So that top element there, the FCA is free carrier. What we're finding from our clients is that European suppliers are saying to the UK buyers, okay, we'll load the goods at our premises. We'll even go as far as to arrange an export entry from our country, but from then it's up to you. That's not a total negative. What it does mean is you can take control of the freight, you can take control of the freight costs, and if you align yourself with the right suppliers, you can probably actually even save money. But really, you must have, if you're not already doing, you must have those conversations now with your suppliers so that you know and they know exactly where your responsibility begins and ends in terms of getting that freight now from Europe into the UK post January. How are you going to beat the jam? Well, I've been with LV, as Lizzie said, we're an Anglo-Dutch company for almost 17 years now, and it's only really within the last 6 to 12 months that I've become aware, although my Dutch colleagues have been well aware, of this issue of fiscal representation. And it has to do with whereby the European suppliers are loath to get involved in DDP. The European buyers from UK shippers are saying to them, listen, we want you to handle everything. So rather than having to set up your own physical entity in Europe, in the EU, once we're out of it in January, a separate almost mini sector is set up of fiscal representation, where the companies in Holland, in Belgium, in Georgia, who will act as fiscal representatives. So they will not handle the entries as such, the import entries into the EU, but certainly on the tax side, they will offer that service. And it was an education to me, in actual fact, that certainly within, say, Holland and Belgium, those VAT issues are very different to here. It can be VAT in name only. It's not actually a figure that is often payable, unlike within the UK, where you'll pay VAT and then you'll reclaim it during the course of your normal returns. It's not always the case in certainly in Holland and Belgium. So it can actually be a cash flow advantage for you to look that way and get close to a fiscal representative. So we think we're ready for Brexit. We've been having these conversations with our colleagues and with our clients for some time now. But obviously, not everything is certain now. With talks still going on on the continent with the governments involved, and we're all hoping for some sort of clarity soon enough. But in the meantime, we just all have to help ourselves and do the best we can. And one of the things that companies are, certainly UK companies and our import clients have been looking at more and more, and this has happened before the Brexit issue arose, really, but it's really built up a pace since Brexit, and for two reasons, really. Companies now in the UK who perhaps will import maybe from China or from India into the UK, but their ultimate clients are on the continent in Europe, are now thinking to themselves, well, why do we bring into the UK in the first place? There's a potential double whammy here. We're bringing our car containers in from China. We're paying duty and VAT on them coming to China. And if there's a no deal, by the time we send them to our clients in the EU, we could be hit again. So with duties into those clients' countries. So what a lot of our clients are doing at the moment is looking at this notion of working with a fulfilment centre, cutting out the UK. And the second reason they're looking at that is because of issues in, I mean, it's crazy at the moment situation in, for example, Felixstowe, just down the road from a lot of yourselves there, and other ports in the UK with congestion. What companies are doing is looking to ship into the continent, into Rotterdam, Antwerp, or Hamburg, clear under bond into a fulfillment centre, into a warehouse. So no duty, no taxes payable until such point as the goods are then delivered to the ultimate clients. It's something to look at. It really is. And the situation with the UK ports, I don't think is going to improve very, very quickly. In fact, you've got some shipping lines now, and we're at the coalface here. We're talking to the shipping lines every day. They're putting a block on loading cargo out of China throughout January and most of February. So there'll be nothing coming in. It's a real situation, and I'm not a merchant of doom and gloom on that, but that's exactly what's happening at the moment. So it's something possibly to look at. So some alternatives to the jam will be, for example, there have been great strides made with various short sea carriers. It's estimated that between 75 and 80% of traffic that moves between the UK and the EU does so via the Strait of Dover, via Dover-Calais. Now, there are moves afoot to have that reliance on that channel reduced. And to be fair, I think to the logistics sector, they've stepped up to the plate on this, and there's been new services introduced. For example, last week there was a service launched from Bilbao and from Portugal up into the UK short sea. It's up to yourselves really to look at the figures and see if the additional couple of days transit time can whether your business can suffer that. Bear in mind, it can actually be quite cheaper to ship via containers into these ports and bypass the additional costs of potential jams within Europe. So it's something definitely to look at and to consider. Another one being a much more expensive option of air freight. But believe it or not, we've got clients asking us for charters, for part charters, and I'm sure we're not alone in that. Shipping from the continent into the UK in an effort to avoid the jam. Obviously, the value of your goods very much dictates whether that is feasible or not, but it's something that companies are actually looking at. I'm conscious of time here now. I did practice this from the Dawson. I did do it in the 20 minutes allocated. So just bear with me 2 more minutes. It's time really to check, change, and go. Make sure you're talking to the forwarders, the logistics company that you need to ensure smoothest possible transition. I'm just going to finish off. It'd be very remiss of me if I didn't talk a little. 2 slides about our company. 1921, we were founded in Holland. So obviously next year is a massive year for us, centenary of business. In terms of the UK, we've been here since 1986. We've got just over 200 employees throughout the UK, based in 11 offices. 89 million pounds turnover. That was up to 100 million pounds in 2019. So we're doing something right somewhere. The services we're offering, what you would expect from a freight forwarding company. We're handling ocean freight, road transport. We're involved in energy. So, for example, locally down by yourselves, we've been involved in Sheringham Shoal Wind Farm, Scroby Sands, and hoping to be involved in Norfolk Vanguard and Boreas when they come about. And there's our footprint globally there. You see down the left there, obviously, no prizes for guessing which office I'm based at, but just underneath the Liverpool office is Great Yarmouth. We've got a really good team of people, AD and Ian and Sarah, who are based over at Gorleston at the Beacon Innovation Centre. They're fully conversant with all modes of transport, air, sea, road, import and export. And we'd be really pleased to get to know some of the listeners a bit better and develop our local relationships down there in Norfolk. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks for listening.
Kevin, that was great. Thank you ever so much for sharing all of that information and knowledge with us. So just before I hand over to Tracy, I just wanted to ask another poll question, just again to get a bit more of an idea of how people are doing and how prepared they are. So the next question is, have you appointed a customs broker before January 2021? Give it a couple of seconds for people to answer that. Also, thank you to everyone who's posting questions in the question and answer at the moment. There's some really good ones in there, which I know will make for interesting Q&A at the end of today's session. That is brilliant. Thank you for the poll. So as you can see, there's actually quite a split of yes and no's there. So that's very interesting. Fantastic. So I now want to introduce you to Tracy Renshaw from Import Export Support. So many importers and export find there's a shortage of consultancy services with expertise in representing blue chip companies to HMRC. Tracy recognised this shortfall in expertise and in 2014 launched Import Export Support to provide key insight and cost saving services. Just before Tracy launched the business, she was head of customs and excise at Marks and Spencer's, where she saved them over £1 million in import taxes. So I want to hand over to you, please, Tracy.
Okay, hello guys. Thank you for listening and well done, Kevin. I know this is quite a nerve-wracking thing to do and you did it really well. I can only echo what Kevin was saying with regards to sort of finding the right partner and making sure that you're well prepared. And I think he did some really good stuff around the practicalities of the freight forwarding industry and the challenges to us all ahead. So I hope you now can all see the slides that I'm presenting. So as Lizzie just quite nicely introduced me, my name's Tracy Renshaw. I set up Import Export Support 6 years ago and have been supporting local businesses and national businesses now in helping them deal with the complexities of importing and exporting. So I'm going to share with you over the next few slides a little bit of information around what we can do and some of the solutions that you can put in place with regards to, you know, your importing and exporting activities and how you deal with the Brexit situation and the challenges that that brings with us. So, sorry, let me click on the right thing. Okay, so we left the EU on the 31st of January this year, and we are currently in transition. And as Kevin pointed out, we still do not know whether there's going to be a deal or no deal scenario. However, the reality is that things have already started to change. And although currently our home market is still the EU and anything that you are importing currently into the UK is in free circulation in the EU, this will change. So at 11 p.m. on the 31st of December, just before we celebrate the new year, we will leave the EU. And our borders change. So what effectively has happened, our borders have shrunk. So we now no longer are part of the EU. And therefore, as such, our home market becomes just the UK. And there will be a new border between us and the EU. And an import and export declaration will be required in order to bring your goods through that border. And the import declaration or export declaration that's generated in the UK will need to be done with a GB EORI number. And the corresponding declaration done in the EU 27 countries will need an EU EORI number. That means one beginning with NL, ES, DE, all of those countries. So therefore, it's quite important to understand that. And one of the main changes as a result of this is that although Northern Ireland is still part of the UK, it has stayed within the customs union of the EU. And therefore, there are different rules that apply. And one of those specifically is that there will be an import declaration required when you put your goods into Northern Ireland. So if you have and trade currently with Northern Ireland, you will need to understand what happens and what the changes are with regards to your shipments. There is the service set up called the TSS, and I'll be giving you more details of that a bit later on. And they will help you with these formalities. Because if we do have a Brexit scenario where we have a hard Brexit rather than a trade deal with the EU, then our tariffs will be different. And the UK global tariffs, I'll explain a bit later on, has different tariff rates. And therefore, we need to understand that you need to pay the EU tariffs when you are importing into Northern Ireland if your goods are likely to enter Southern Ireland via Northern Ireland. Okay, so what's going to be required? A customs declaration. What is a customs declaration? For those of you who currently only trade with the EU, you've probably never seen one before. It's called a SAD C88. And the reason it's called a SAD C88 is it means it's a single administrative document, and C88 is because it was actually created in 1988. And as we all know, 1988 is quite a long time ago. It's actually the year I got married. And in those days, there was no computers really to deal with. So the SAD C88 is based on a paper document. And therefore, there are 68 requirements of this document to fill in. And it's really important that you get this accurate. It's currently not required, as we know, for UK EU movements. And as Kevin said earlier on, you can either self-declare or you can use an agent or a forwarder known as a customs intermediary. And if you were to look at the requirements to fill out a SAD C88 document, I would recommend that you actually use someone else to do this for you because it's complicated. It needs to be pre-lodged, which is a prerequisite. So this means that you need to have created this document before your goods leave your warehouse effectively and you hand them over to your haulier. And it does need to be accurate. HMRC will be checking, and there are fines and liabilities for any transgressions that you make. Customs duty, this is what we've been talking about. So it's quite important that you understand a little bit about customs duty. And the amount that you pay is based on three things. And these are the things I think you should concentrate on. Whilst your SAD C88 document needs to be accurate, the three areas which you need to ensure are absolutely accurate are the classification of your goods. What are your goods? You know, what classification will you give them? How much are you paying for those goods? And where do they come from? Where are they manufactured? Different ways to pay your duty and VAT. Specifically, you can have a deferment account, or you can use your agents. Lots of agents will allow you at a cost to use their deferment account to account for the duty and VAT as you import the goods into the country. You can make fast payments. We can do a direct payment to HMRC using this fast system. You'd need to have a look and understand what the requirements are to do that one. And HMRC have introduced postponed import VAT accounting from the 1st of January. So again, have a look on the .gov.uk site for the rules around that. Because that will allow you to hopefully have a lower duty deferment account, because you can account for your VAT on the through your VAT return rather than actually paying it. Classification. I have a little fun slide here where I did some, and these are things that I've actually reviewed the classification of. And I think it's important that you understand that there are certain things when you're classifying your goods, you need to understand about them. And as I run through the few little pictures on there, the key one that I did for an importing toy company was around whether that helicopter there, a remote control helicopter, was plastic or not plastic. It made the difference of 4.7% duty. And I managed to get what's called a BTI, which is a binding tariff with HMRC, to agree that it wasn't plastic, and therefore we were able to import them using 0% duty. This animal here, our little puppet, is he stuffed or not stuffed? How stuffed is he? HMRC will again allow you to, will classify based on the amount of stuffing. And with this little chap here, I was able to argue that he was not quite so stuffed, and therefore he was able to come in with 0% duty, again, rather than 4.7%. This wonderful garment on the and here as well, when I was at Marks and Spencer's, one of the things that we mentioned earlier on is that I was able to say that this was actually an item of underwear, and it met the rules of manufacture to allow me to not say that this was a swimsuit, that it was actually a garment that was for a lady to wear as for controlling their tummies effectively. And because of that, there was 6.5% duty instead of 12% duty. But the other thing to consider is these gas cylinders on the right-hand side. If I import these gas cylinders into the United Arab Emirates, the import duty on them, if I classify them as a full system, is 15% duty. If I sell them as parts of a system of fire suppressant equipment, it's 0% duty. So it's understanding that it's not just our import duties, but what the duty rates are into the country you're exporting to. And it's really important you understand these things. Okay, valuation is the third thing we talked about. Second thing we talked about. It's really important that you understand it's not just what you pay for your goods, it is actually the cost of freight insurance and things like royalties, licenses, plate charges, and there is a dutiable value that is created on which you pay VAT. So important again, you will get these slides, so I know I'm whistling through them and you should be able to read them. And obviously if you have any questions, you can direct them at the chamber or myself afterwards. Origin. There are two kinds of origin, and this morning I've been talking South Korean free trade agreement with a client. They are wanting to operate the preferential duty rates that come as a result of a free trade agreement. So it's important you understand when you are in manufacturing or you are in importing and re-exporting, if there is a free trade agreement, you can pay lower duties on import into those countries. But you do need to understand where your goods have come from and make sure that you can prove origin. And that is something that I know the Chamber do on a daily basis. So they can definitely support you on that one. They are complex and there's lots of formulaic things to do to prove origin. Kevin talked a little bit about, whether you relocate and use offices elsewhere in the EU in order to avoid double duty effectively if we end up in a no-deal scenario. There are other ways of making sure that you manage your dutiable values, and they are by applying for and getting authorization to operate special procedures. And one of those is a customs warehouse. And that is where you can import goods from a third country into the UK. And if you re-export them, the UK VAT and duty are not applied. But obviously, when you then import them into the country you are sending them to, the VAT and duty for that country applies. CFSP is another one where you are allowed to use a simplified frontier declaration to fast track your goods through the port and do the follow-up declaration later on. There's nothing simple about it because it does involve 3 declarations, but it does give you the facility to fast track through the ports. Inward and outward processing, as the words are out, is if you're going to be processing your goods, then you might want to look at one of these reliefs. There's end use relief, which is very similar, that you've imported something for a certain end use, and when you put it to that end use, then you cannot pay VAT and duty on the goods that you imported. And temporary admissions again. There's also things like returns good release, ATA carnets, which again, the Chamber will probably be able to assist you with in terms of giving you a passport for your goods if you want to take your goods out for a show, for example. If you're a photographer and you've got a huge amount of valuable equipment that you need to take with you, get a passport called an ATA carnet for those goods and you can temporarily export them, get your passport stamped and re-import them back into the UK. And one of the things that happens is when your goods are awaiting the customs declaration, they're usually put in temporary storage by your haulier whilst the declaration system's going on. Again, there's lots more information that I can give you on there. You can find it on the .gov site or you can talk about that one. But it will help you manage your duty bill specifically. So let's get into the Brexit prep. So one of the things I thought about when my clients were asking me hundreds of questions throughout the last few months, when actually the penny dropped that this is happening and we are leaving the EU and we might not have a deal, and people started to really, really panic about the scenario, is I came up with a blank sheet of paper and thought, what would I do if I was in your shoes? What do I think I need to really think about? There's lots of things I need to think about. We've had COVID this year, we've had lots of challenges, but actually, what do I need to think about? And I came up with 15 points. And I think the key ones are about understanding your supply chain. And that means, as Kevin was talking about, who's going to be the importer and exporter of record. So for your movement from the UK into the EU, you can, if you have a GB ORI number, create the export declaration. However, somebody in the EU needs to create an import declaration. And as Kevin talked about, there are solutions out there for different countries, and you need to manage that and understand what that entails. And I think the key issue here can be more about being able to be the owner of goods in that country and being able to reclaim the VAT that is applied. VAT is not, we're not talking about sales VAT here, we're actually talking about import VAT, and you need to be the owner of the goods when you import in order to be able to reclaim that. Again, appoint someone to do this for you, or make sure that your supplier customer in the EU has got someone, a customs intermediary, to do that for them. And make sure that all the data required, the 60 odd elements for this SAD C88 document, is available to you, and that you have it as your goods leave your warehouse. Okay, look at the accuracy of this data. Kevin mentioned lots of numbers there, which were mind-numbing to think about the number of declarations that are going to be going through the chief customs system. The accuracy of those will actually, because we've got new trainees working on it, and possibly, the sheer volume of them, there are going to be mistakes. So implement checks, make sure you're not the one whose entry is wrong, and if it is wrong, there are ways of correcting it, and that can be done. So make sure you define and capture that process, and that you understand your responsibility to make sure your forwarder, your agent, does it properly for you. There's new systems coming in. We've mentioned there's things, you're going to hear things like permission to progress, P2P, movement reference numbers, GVMS. Acronym City is just headed your way. So understand what those are, and if you don't, just ask. There's no daft question at this point in time. Look at your classification. As I said earlier on, we are coming out of the EU, and we no longer are going to be using the same classification system as they are. We are going to be using the UK Global Tariff, and the rates, import rates on there, are different from the Common External Tariff, which is the one we use now, and actually they're lower. And they apply to all imports into the UK, not just those from rest of the world. So have a look and see if you actually are going to benefit from the lower import rates for all of your goods. Talked Incoterms, so I will jump on that one. And I mentioned postponed import VAT accounting. This is a very good way of being able to account for your VAT from the 1st of January. Look at Northern Ireland specifically and register for the Trader Support Service. You do need an EORI number, an NI EORI number, to be able to create that import declaration there. The Goods Vehicle Management System, Movement System, it is now in place, and hauliers need to register with that, and you need to make sure you give them the information about your shipments so that they can lodge that if they're going through any of these RoRo ports. And you will need to submit intrastat declarations from the 1st of January next year if you do or currently do that, and you meet the thresholds. So HMRC have decided that they still need us to do both kinds of things. We're going to do an import declaration, and we're going to have to do an arrivals intrastat report as well. Again, a little bit of salesman here. Sign up for regular updates if you want to click on that link. I'm trying to be really active and keep you all informed as much as I find things out. I'm trying to get them out there with the help of my wonderful marketing team. So hopefully I've come in on time. I'm not sure if I have, but hopefully it's been helpful for you guys, and we can do some Q&A now.
Tracy, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And we'll make sure after this as well, we circulate contact details for both Kevin and yourself, so people can go and sign up and get in contact. Just before I hand over to Nova from the Norfolk Chambers, we've just got one other poll question. So we just wanted to find out what topics you might be interested in for future sessions. Obviously, we want to be giving you the most relevant things. So if you have a couple of seconds, it'd be great to choose if any of those topics would be good for future for these sessions. That's great. We'll give it a couple more seconds and then I'll hand over to Nova. See, there's been lots of questions asked as well, so that's fantastic. Perfect. So that is great. Thank you ever so much, everyone, for filling in that poll. That just really helps us with what we'd like to be doing for the future. So I'm now going to hand over to Nova from the Norfolk Chambers.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for both Kevin and Tracy. That was a huge amount of information, a very fast canter through how to be prepared. I'm sure lots of people have got other questions, so we look forward to hearing from them, but I will just go through the questions we have at the moment. My starting question, and I'll ask it first because bless him, he asked it and within 4 minutes of us starting, is Matt Mitchell. He said some of his contacts in Spain are telling us that we will need to stop at checkpoints in Europe for vehicles to be checked and receive paperwork for onward travel. Is this correct?
So I don't know whether you want me to answer this one, Kevin.
Go ahead, Tracy. Yep.
I believe this is where you are using transit. So so your goods are not entering the country of the end destination. So, for example, you might ship your goods to France and then onward supply to Spain. I think this is where I'm probably not going to be able to answer the question, but I'm hearing the same thing myself. So I think there are ways of if you do it under transit, so you become a registered consignor and then you can discharge the transit in the end country, then I think the number of checks will be less. But if you are actually not using transit, then there will be checks as your goods move through. I don't know whether you can add anything else to that, Kevin.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, that's my understanding also, Tracy. And obviously, one of the ways of getting not getting around that as such, but if you're shipping directly from, say, Bilbao into a UK port, that's one of the things where the industry is sort of saying, well, in order to try and alleviate these documentary issues and multiple checks and via road services, it's something to consider.
So shipping direct potentially is another thought. That was one of the challenges. But I guess where you don't have a sea border, it might be more difficult.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving swiftly on to the next question, Barry Ludkin asked, from the 1st of January, any customer outside the UK, will they all be zero rated for sales invoices?
So any customer that you are sending your goods to from the UK in Europe, you mean? So yes, they'll be treated like a rest of world is currently, which is zero rating, provided you actually can prove the export. The key element here is proof of export, is making sure that your goods are properly exported and you get the correct status of export. Otherwise, alternative proof of export can be accepted, but HMRC are not happy with that. So yes, they're treated like rest of world exports.
Okay. Question from Stefan Glassell. Do freight forwarders submit the declarations on our behalf as a standard part of the service? I'm guessing this is one for Kevin.
Yes, we do indeed. It all forms part of the entry based on information. We act purely as agents, but we supply that information currently to the chief system. Also, a new system is being rolled out with limited success, it must be said, at the moment, called CDS, which is being rolled out specifically to handle freight to and from the GB and Northern Ireland. But yeah, that forms part of all the service, and it's not charged separately either. It comes under the one fee for whether the security elements as well as the other part of the data that form part of the entry.
Okay, brilliant. Slightly longer question now. I've got this from an anonymous attendee. If we begin quoting Incoterm DAP to our customers, I understand that means we will arrange everything to get to the named place of delivery, except for customs clearance and duty. I want our customer to cover the freight costs though. What is the correct terminology to tell them we will arrange and prepay the delivery, but we will invoice them for it?
Well, there isn't one really. If I could go with that one, Tracy, there isn't one, because what you're doing there, you're working within changing around the Incoterm. If you're that'll have to be done as a separate agreement with your clients, and that does happen, for example, in Incoterms quite regularly. For example, where UK shippers are selling under ex works terms, they do sometimes have to say separately with the client who is responsible for actually loading those goods onto a vehicle. So for DAP, strictly speaking, you would be responsible in paying for the freight, but you can work that out with your client to bill that separately. Yeah, the Incoterms are a guide. They're not can be used contractually, but they're mainly a guide. But there are ways within and without that you can discuss. They form a basis, the Incoterm, of how you're going to trade with your clients or with your supplier, a basis only.
Yeah. And I agree with that. So the client contract overrides the terms. So you can say we're using DAP, but we will pay for this within the contract, and that's fine. That's acceptable.
And the thing is, at the moment, if I could just add, with DAP, DAP within Europe at the moment is much the same as DDP, because there aren't any duties at the moment. If there's no deal, come 1st of January, that will change. And what you may find is, because a lot of UK companies just at the moment, they will receive the one invoice that from the suppliers that will not distinguish between freight and the cost of the goods. What you will find, but you can always obviously request that. But what you may find you can make savings on routing and controlling the transport element yourselves.
Brilliant, thank you. Roger Moore has a question on new commodity codes. He says that he thinks that after 2021, they will stay the same for now. And is the government planning to stop using the chief system after 2021?
You want me to answer that one, Kevin?
Yes, you could do. Yes, certainly.
Okay, so the UK Global Tariff comes into force on the as of the 1st of January, and those apply to imports into the UK. So therefore, the tariff has changed. It is based on the current tariff. However, the duty rates have been amended, and there's several different amendments. They've either been liberalised, i.e. brought down to zero, or they've been reduced, or they've been changed because they are per item based in euros, which we've converted to pounds. So there's lots of reasons that the duty rate might be different. And the UK Global Tariff currently only has 8 digits in it for some codes. You might have a look in there. I think there's I can't remember the percentage, but it's quite a high percentage that is still only quoted at 8 digits. For an import declaration, you need 10 digits. And if you're in there and you see there's 2 digits missing, then the last 2 digits will be 00 as it sits at the moment. The last 2 digits are going to be for when we have anti-dumping or countervailing duties of our own that we impose, and that will change the last digits of the commodity code. These will apply for the chief system, and as far as we are aware, CDS, which is the replacement for chief, which should have gone live 3 years ago and it still is not live, is currently in test and is due to be rolled out later this year. But we hear this so frequently, so I wouldn't hold your breath about CDS being here later this year. However, there is also talk that CDS will be used for imports into Northern Ireland. So if you are importing into Northern Ireland, they will be done using CDS, not using chief. So it's but we've actually still to see that happen, because at the moment, I think there are still issues with CDS and its performance.
Yeah, I think these are incredibly complex systems, Tracy, aren't they? These the customs processing systems. I always remember when Chief first came out, it was given the nickname "Can't handle import and export freight" because there were so many teething problems with it at that time. And look at it now; it's second nature to everybody. So I'm sure that CDS will eventually take its place. But just at the moment, there seem to be some real fundamental issues with it. And one that I heard just 2 weeks ago was on one sort of trial run out, there was only the facility to process invoices in one single currency, which is pretty much limiting international trade. So I'm sure they'll get there, but you're quite right to point out that it won't be an overnight thing, and any immediate rollout is far from the case at the moment.
But I think one of the things I saw yesterday when I was looking around, if you're going to go for postponed import VAT accounting, you might need to register for CDS through the government gateway to be able to get the monthly statements in order to make the returns that you need to make under postponed import VAT accounting.
Right.
So you might find that you are having to log in and see CDS, however, not using it. Yeah, good question. Well done.
Mm.
Like all things, it's always complicated when dealing with government systems. Christine Good has a question. We've had problems gaining indirect representation in the EU for import clearances in our UK company name. Do either of you have any advice on this?
Could you answer that, Tracy?
I'm kind of trying to think what the question is. So she's trying to act as an indirect for importing goods from the UK into the EU, I believe. And so she's I actually am not sure I understand. I can answer. I think it's one of those questions that I would need to ask a few more questions to be able to answer fully. Indirect representation and direct representation are different from each other. So normally Kevin and his company would act as a direct representative because they are then not liable for any VAT and duty incurred as a result of their transaction. Being an indirect rep gives you dual and several liability for the import, any sort of costs or import duties that come as a result of that declaration being inaccurate. So it's a complicated answer, which I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer. Sorry, Christine. Happy to pick up a call because I do know who you are. If you want to give me a bell, and we'll talk it through.
We will be putting both Kevin and Tracy's contact details on the post-event email to you, so you feel free to ask questions of either of them. They're both very keen to help. Peter Llewellyn Stamp has a question. We received free issue parts and materials from EU customers to which we apply hard coatings and return the product. The parts and materials remain the property of our customers. How can we avoid duty on the material coming in and out of the UK and only have duty on our hard coating element?
So do you want me to answer that one, Kevin, or you?
Is that an IPR issue? You're probably more qualified than me on IPR, I would have thought, Tracy. I'm a simple freight forwarder.
So if you saw my slide where we talked about special procedures, there is a special procedure called inward processing, and that will allow you to bring goods into the country under duty suspension, and whilst you do any kind of processing to them whilst they're in the country, they will be held under duty suspension, and then that is discharged when the goods are then re-exported back. So you can do that 3 times a year without authorization, but you will then have to have a guarantee to cover those movements. But if you apply to be for authorization and you meet the rules, then you don't need a guarantee because they've withdrawn the requirement to have a guarantee in place. So yes, you can do it.
Excellent. So government website, surprise, surprise, has conflicting information on it.
Really?
One shows that we'll only need to enter a safety and security declaration to enter the UK and can raise a supplementary declaration later on. Another article shows we need to complete a simplified declaration as well as both of the above. Which is correct?
Do you want to answer that one, Kevin, or shall I go with it again?
You can do that again, Tracy, because I'm not sure of the. I mean, we're promoting the simplified declaration, as opposed to any CFSP.
I think, again, this question is about the fact that the government brought in a deferred declaration system. So what they're allowing companies to do, if they have CFSP authorization, are to defer the creation of the customs declaration for 6 months. So if you bring goods in on the 1st of January, you don't have to do the declaration until the 1st of July. And this is using the authorization called CFSP. So whoever's going to do the the declaration on the 1st of July will need to have CFSP approval. And agents are offering to do this on behalf of companies, so you don't have to have your own approval. And in that instance, they would be acting as a direct rep, not as an indirect rep. Sorry, as an indirect rep, not a direct rep. So I think that's called deferred. But what you actually need to do when you bring the goods in is you have to have adequate records. Under entry into declarants records under EIDR, put almost the details of a customs declaration and retain that information in your record. I think that's maybe what he's referring to. So it does seem conflicting, but they've kind of separated it out now, and they're calling it deferred declaration rather than CFSP declarations. If you do a CFSP declaration, there is a requirement to do a simplified frontier declaration when the goods enter the country, which is minimal information about your import, and to do a follow-up declaration when the goods either arrive at your depot or within 4 working days of the month following their import. And there is a special procedure, and you need to be authorized to do that. So I think it looks conflicting, but it isn't. And again, have a little look around and see if it helps.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. There are lots of questions in the chat, and we will actually put all of these questions to Kevin and Tracy. However, we're about to run out of time. So I'd like to thank Tracy and Kevin for answering all of those questions on the fly, on the hoof.
Thank you, Tracy.
We have one more poll. I don't know whether Lizzie or Kayleen is going to put it up, but it's basically, how would you rate this session? So can I ask, oh, there you go, there's the poll. So how well do you rate this session? Extremely useful, very useful, useful, a little useful, not helpful? Please don't tick that one. I think they present some brilliant information. We'll give you a few more moments to vote. Okay.
I'll settle for that.
Brilliant. So if we'd like to put up the results, that'd be really good. Sure, how brilliant. Look at that. Thank you very much. That's really useful, everybody. Thank you. So it falls to me to say thank you very much to our strategic partner, LV Shipping, and Kevin Walsh. Thank you to Tracy Renshaw from Import Export Support for providing your expertise and your knowledge. It's very much appreciated. To Lizzie and Kayleen for delivering this event so effectively. Thank you. And lastly, to everybody on this call, thank you so much for taking the time to attend. Obviously, you found it useful. We will be sending you more information after, together with the slides. Please feel free to ask any questions of either Kevin, Tracy, or us at the Chamber. Thank you very much for all attending. Good afternoon.